The importance of exports to the U.S. beef industry has been well documented, and the U.S. Meat Export Federation works hard every day to enhance demand for our product overseas. Cattleman to Cattleman reporter Russell Nemitz has more on this important topic.
Well, without question, export markets continue to play a very important role for the entire U.S. beef cattle industry. And with us on today's segment to talk more about export markets is one of this industry's leading experts in this area, Dan Halstrom, the President and Chief Executive Officer of the U.S. Meat Export Federation. And Dan, before we talk about all of the exciting news on the trade front since the first of this year, let's take a look back at last year's export numbers and what led to some of those successes.
Well, I think all things considered, 2019 turned out to be a pretty darn good year. We're going to be down slightly from the 2018 record year, but just by a couple percentage points. And considering the headwinds we had with Japan and with Europe and some other of the key markets, I kind of would consider this being a success in 2019. And as you alluded to, we have a lot of good news going into 2020.
Well, let's talk more about that, because since the first of the year, we've had a new trade deal go into effect with our friends in Japan. Then we had the Phase 1 trade agreement signing with the Chinese, and just most recently, USMCA signed into law. In all your time at USMEF, could have you imagined having three major trade deals like what I just mentioned happen within the course of just a few weeks?
No, you can't imagine that all would happen in a few weeks. It's like Christmas reborn, but no, it's good news. I'm especially excited, though, about this Japan deal. Japan's been our number one market for decades. It's a reliable market, buying 52 weeks of the year, and getting us on a level playing field with our competition, primarily Australia, to the tune of a 12.5-13% disadvantage last year. January 1, we're even. So really that's all we ask, is that we're on an even playing field. And I think we're enabled now to really make some inroads in 2020 in terms of regaining lost market share. And as it turns out, the timing is pretty darn good, because we all know what's going on in Australia. They've been in a bit of a liquidation mode, and their numbers are down. So what better time to really make an impact and regain some of this share?
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about where we were at last year at this time in 2019. You just talked about some of those opportunities this year. Do you think with everything we've already talked about, we could get back to where we were in 2018, some of those record-setting numbers?
I think without a doubt Japan will. We'll be setting a new record this year. Our estimates show that we're going to go from $2 billion in sales to 2.2 or 2.3, and then within a couple of years, 2.5 plus. Now, there's a lot of things that play into that, but we definitely have the wherewithal to see a dramatic increase in business there. That being said, other key markets that are also playing into this, Korea was a $1.8 billion market, and we see that going over $2 billion this year as well. So Japan and Korea are two mainstay markets that really we leaned on forever, and it's going to continue to be the case.
Let's talk a little bit more about the opportunities now that we do have that Phase 1 trade agreement in place with the Chinese. Pretty exciting news not too many years ago when the doors opened back to U.S. beef in China. What lies ahead here in the new year and beyond in China?
Yeah, I think the Phase 1 deal is good news, but it's just that. It's Phase 1. It's not Nirvana, so to speak, because we still have some restrictions, but we've made a lot of progress. And the hormone requirement being dropped, the traceability requirement being altered much more favorably. This is good news in terms of total cattle that will qualify for China. Now, we do still have some negatives, not to focus on negatives, but we still have a 47% duty on U.S. beef into China. Now, the other good news in this whole thing, and really I don't like to stray and talk too much about competing proteins, but they have a heck of a problem in China on pork. 25% of the world's supply is gone for this ASF virus. So total protein is short, and no doubt this is going to benefit all species. Poultry business is already up, consumption is up on poultry, and no doubt beef will follow. So I think it's a good news story, even though it's only Phase 1.
Absolutely. How does that impact your overseas staff, whether it's China or Japan or even in Korea? Do you ramp up your staff a little bit, so to speak, over there to make sure that this U.S. beef and other red meat protein from this country stay front and center on that plate?
Yes. over the years, we've become very nimble, very fluid in how we react because these market conditions seem like every month something's changing. So we're used to that. But exactly right, we have to adapt to the conditions. And whether it's the Japan deal or this China Phase 1 deal, we've already been in the process of adjusting and getting ready to make an impact.
Well, as always, we appreciate you taking a little bit of time for us and joining us back here on Cattleman to Cattleman.
Yeah, my pleasure, anytime.
All right, again, we've been visiting with Dan Halstrom, the President and CEO of the U.S. Meat Export Federation, and as he mentioned, it's an exciting time on the trade front for the entire U.S. beef cattle industry.